that leads us to our history segment today with Harold Peacock from History Out There, who's looking back to some of the deadly storms reported as cyclones in the Darling Downs district, and some as long ago as 142 years. How are you, Harold?
I'm very well, thanks, Darby. You're staying safe in this weather. Yeah, the forecasters back then, well, even as recently as 50 years ago, didn't have satellite pictures to help them with their forecasting.
No.
So you get even asked the forecaster after 8 o'clock, what difference does the satellite pictures make? It's huge because he knows there's a cyclone. Back then, a big destructive wind storm that they called a cyclone.
Right. Okay. And the only way they could tell it was coming was stick their head out the window.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's right.
Some say they still do that today, but I'm not sure.
Well, look, I'll take you back to 1914 to start with. This is in April 1914. A cyclone was reported to have ripped through the Gatton district, and that's where German-born Joseph Radke was returning home in his horse and cart after having delivered cream to the factory. And that's when the cyclone struck. Now, Radke was actually blown off his cart and drowned in a washout by the road. The winds were horrendous. And meanwhile, at the same time, in the same cyclone, this time in Warwick, James Smith was blown into the Condamine River.
Ooh.
The wind wouldn't let him get out, and he drowned.
Jeez.
And then in February 1913, in the Laidley district, another reported cyclone struck. The force of the winds was so strong that the town clock was blown out of the post office. That's how bad it was. And at the same time, on the nearby Forest Hill to Blenheim Road, the farmer Humphrey Ewing was loading potatoes with his son James. Now, in this instance, the cyclonic winds came with lightning, and a lightning flash knocked Ewing unconscious. Now, when he woke up, his son was dead on one side of him, and a horse was dead on the other. It was awful.
Oh, jeez.
And going further back, in January 1906, in Dalby, houses were unroofed and denuded of verandas when a cyclone hit town. The cordial factory owned by Mr. John Bradford suffered the worst, with the whole establishment just demolished, and over 40 dozen bottles of cordial were smashed. Now, it didn't get any better for Bradford, because shortly afterwards, his goat was stolen. Now, how bad is that?
Oh, yeah.
And then going further back in time, in November 1883, the worst known weather event to hit Toowoomba up to that stage was reported as a cyclone. Houses were unroofed right across town, and tragically, there was a fatality. Now, at about 7 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, the iron foundry received the full force of the winds, and all its buildings were unroofed. The nearby brand new gasworks copped it even worse. The gasworks had only just been built in 1879 at a cost of £9,000. Now, Damo, that's almost $10 million in today's money.
It wasn't a cheap one, was it?
No, well, power was still important back then too, right? Now, the gale force winds blew the gasworks and its brick buildings away.
Wow.
Everything was demolished except for the chimney, which was pretty much the only thing left standing. Now, a fireman by the name of George Morton was working in the manufacturing chamber when the building was blown down on top of him. He narrowly missed being killed despite being struck by falling mass of bricks. Now, he sustained really serious head injuries, and even after being rescued, he passed out due to loss of blood. But working near Morton was the manager of the gasworks, Mr. Henry Webber. Now, he was sheltering in the chamber while the cyclone was raging all around him. Mr. Webber was killed when over 2 tons of masonry fell directly on top of him. Now, Webber tragically left a widow and 6 children. But you know what? Toowoomba rallied around and raised a public subscription for their support. So, Damo, even 140 years ago, Toowoomba rallied to support our neighbours. But that doesn't mean we can't be careful in the coming days. So please, everyone, be careful and listen to your forecast that you've got after 8, I'd say.
Exactly, mate. And appreciate the story and the look back at those storms that have come through our region. It's always interesting, isn't it? I mean, as we said, these days with all of the technology, when Mother Nature unleashes, there's not much difference between back then and today.
That's right. All you can do is prepare. Hopefully the building's a little bit more cyclone-proof because the gasworks in Toowoomba certainly weren't, even though there was a lot of money spent on them.
Yeah.
But all you can do is prepare, isn't it? And that's exactly the same even 142 years ago.
Exactly. Now, mate, we can read this story on your website.
Absolutely. You can go online to historyouthere.com, as well as all the socials, the links going back there. So on YouTube, on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook.
Yeah.
All back to historyouthere.com.
Fantastic, mate. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to doing it all again next week.
And stay safe.
Thank you so much. There we go. Harold Peacock from historyouthere.com. Check it out on the website, and make sure you listen each and every Tuesday around this time for some local history. Back in a moment.